Welcome to episode number 1 of the Sizzle football podcast. Today I will be talking about a recap of the first round of the NFL draft. And my next episode will drop next week. This will just be episode 1, obviously. And the following episodes, I will start with team episodes. I'll do one episode on every team. And I'll just talk about kind of where every team is right now going into the season, after the draft, after free agency. And I'll just kind of talk about where I think those teams will finish, looking at their schedule, what record they'll finish, where they'll finish in terms of the season. And I'll do playoff predictions and everything starting in my next episode. I'll do those types of things. But for today, I want to stick with the NFL draft. Just a quick reminder, make sure you go and you follow the Instagram page. It's Sizzle Football. And the YouTube account will also, the YouTube account will be the same YouTube account that I use for my basketball podcast, which you can follow on Instagram at Sizzle Podcast. That's for the basketball one. But the YouTube is just Sizzle Podcast. And that will have both my football and basketball podcast up there. So if you want that, or you want to go check out both of those podcasts, just check out that channel and you'll see both of them there. I'm going to organize them into a playlist. So you guys have the football ones in one playlist and the basketball ones in the other playlist, just to make it easier for the user to navigate through the YouTube channel. So without further ado, let me get started with episode 1. So the NFL draft was really interesting last night, to say the least. You know, had a couple of surprises, in my opinion, last night with the NFL draft. And I'm going to get to those surprises, but let me really kind of just start off looking at what each team was able to do in this draft and what kind of grade I would give each team based on who they picked and then based on who they have on their roster. So you look at Jacksonville, obviously, you know, they took the obvious. They went with Trevor Lawrence, who everyone believes will be a franchise quarterback down the line. And they took him with the first overall pick. That was obvious. Everyone knew that was coming. He's the best quarterback in this draft, right? He's the kind of guy that can change a whole franchise around. And they surround him, you know, with decent receivers. You have DJ Chark as your receiver number 1. And then you have Laviska Shenault as your receiver number 2, who is going to be going into his second year. He was a rookie last year, played pretty well as a rookie last year, and I think he has a high upside in my opinion. He's one of the sleepers that was picked in the draft last year. So he's provided with good receivers. You know, you have Tyler Eifert at tight end. You have James Robinson at running back, who was a rookie last year, undrafted, who played great, ran for over 1,000 yards. He was one of the top 10 rushers in the league last year, and he's a guy who has a great future. But Jacksonville may have kind of played with that future a little bit last night when they decided to take Travis Etienne out of Clemson. And he's a great running back. He really does, like they said last night in the draft, he really does check all the boxes in terms of what he can do. He can catch passes. He can run the ball really well. He's he can get you, a lot of yards when he needs to get yards. He's great at breaking tackles. So he really will provide them with everything. He's pretty quick too. He really will provide them with everything. As I mentioned, he checks all the boxes, but you have to look at yourself and say you have James Robinson, who is in his rookie, or is going into his second year this upcoming year. But in his rookie year, he went for over 1,000 yards, and he shows a lot of promise as potentially being a great running back for a long time in this league. So I just didn't really understand that pick. In my opinion, I thought it was more of Jacksonville going for, Trevor Lawrence's teammate at Clemson and going for someone to kind of help with the chemistry, which is always great, instead of going for the guy that they need, right? Travis Etienne might have been the best player available in that draft when Jacksonville was picking at 25, but he wasn't a player that was at a position of need. And in my opinion, I've always been, more of a guy who thinks that when you have a draft pick in the NFL draft, especially around 25, there's still going to be some good prospects left. But if you are a team that needs a position really badly, Jacksonville needs anyone in the secondary really badly, right? They could use some help again to the quarterback too. They should have taken somebody in the secondary or somebody that could get to the quarterback. I mean, to me, the best option for Jackson would have been at that 25 pick to take Trayvon Moehrig. I think he is a top 20 prospect in this draft. He's the best safety in this draft. He's a great ball hawk safety. He's all over everything. I think he's going to be a good safety in the NFL, right? I would have taken that risk. I would have gone there, in my opinion, because you desperately need a secondary in Jacksonville. You drafted C.J. Henderson last year in the draft at the cornerback spot, and he kind of struggled a little bit last year, went back and forth, but I still think he has a lot of potential and he'll be good. So, for me, I give Jacksonville maybe like a C plus in this draft. I just thought really you should have taken a safety at 25 instead of Travis Etienne, who's going to be great, as I mentioned, but it's just not what you needed. So, that's why I would give him the grade I gave him. Obviously, you took Trevor Lawrence, you took a franchise quarterback, so I'm not going to give him too low of a grade, but definitely could have made a better selection, in my opinion, at 25 in terms of what that team needs. So let's go to the number 2 pick, the Jets. They go to Zach Wilson. Really interesting pick here, in my opinion. I mean, it was an obvious pick. Everyone kind of knew where the Jets were going to go with this pick after, trading away Sam Darnold this offseason to Carolina. So everyone kind of knew once they did that they were in the market to grab a quarterback in the draft, and they did just that with Zach Wilson. And Zach Wilson is kind of a guy who I feel like a lot of experts may not have as much knowledge on as others, compared to maybe a Mac Jones or a Trey Lance or Justin Fields or, of course, a Trevor Lawrence, right? And not as many people know about his game, I feel like. But, of course, the Jets were very intrigued by his game. He looked great at Pro Day for BYU. And he looked great all year for BYU last year, in my opinion. And he's a quarterback who is very talented. We know that. But I think the one, knock against him is that, you look at the competition, it may not have been the highest level of competition that Zach Wilson played against. I think that's one of the knocks that I saw against him and that I would kind of agree with. But, in terms of arm strength, he's got great arm strength. He can get the ball down the field. His accuracy is good. He moves well outside the pocket, right? He's a good passer on the run. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of upside there, in my opinion, for the New York Jets with Zach Wilson. The only other weakness I would really say I noticed in Zach Wilson's game when watching his highlights and when seeing scouting reports is the only thing that I would say is that I feel as sometimes when the play starts, when the ball gets snapped and when Zach Wilson has to decide what he's going to do with the ball, I feel like he doesn't do a great job sometimes of reading defensive adjustments that teams make, and that really may be a big negative in the NFL because in college teams don't make as many defensive adjustments as they do in the NFL. And you look at a guy like Zach Wilson, whom that's one of his weaknesses coming in, and of course every player has weaknesses coming in. That's one of his key weaknesses that could kind of come back to haunt him, I feel like, because you look at the NFL, as I mentioned, where there's a lot of defensive rotations. And teams may line up in cover 4, but then guys rotate, so they're really not playing cover 4. They may line up in cover 2, right? But then they don't end up playing cover 2 because everyone will rotate. So he has to learn how to, after the snap, see where the defense is rotating and see what kind of movements he can kind of pick out and choose to kind of notice so he can pick apart defenses, right? The best quarterbacks in the league are going to be the quarterbacks that really can read defenses, right? And that's one thing that Trevor Lawrence really shines with, his ability to read defenses pre and post snap. So, yeah, just for Zach Wilson, just being able to read the defense post snap. He does a decent job of reading it pre snap. Just being able to read it post snap and just seeing the adjustments that defenses make, because that could cause him to throw a lot of interceptions in his first year if he's not able to change that in his game, in my opinion. Now let me just really quick talk about the next pick that the Jets made. They did trade up to make this pick, and they ended up moving up to 14 in the trade, and they took Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a great offensive tackle from USC, and who will give Zach Wilson even more protection. Right? The Jets have a decent offensive line right now. They could use a little work, but the pickup of Tucker is really going to help, and that was a great draft pick. He was one of the better offensive linemen, in my opinion, in this draft, and I really thought that was great for the Jets to trade up to go select him, because he was a guy that they had their eye on for a long time, but were afraid that somebody would snag him in that 14-15 range. So they decided they were going to trade up and go and get him. So great trade, in my opinion, for the Jets. They went in, they got their quarterback, and they went in, they got a future offensive lineman as well. So I would give the Jets an A for this draft. A lot of it's obviously going to depend on Zach Wilson, but overall, you took a good quarterback at number 2. You took the best available quarterback according to what they saw at number 2. And you took a very good offensive lineman in a position that you need, especially when you take a quarterback that young. With the number 2 pick, you're going to need protection around him, and they have that now. So definitely a good draft, in my opinion, for the New York Jets. So let me go to the number 3 pick, San Francisco. The Jags and the Jets both had 2 picks in the first round. San Francisco only had one, and they took Trey Lance. So here's my thing with Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance will end up being a pretty good quarterback, especially in Shanahan's offense, right? Shanahan, does a very good job with quarterbacks. But I am a little worried about the accuracy of Trey Lance. I feel like he could be a guy who throws a lot of picks throughout his career. And I don't want to, say that too early because, like I said, I still do think he has potential to be a good player. But his inaccuracy and just sometimes, his vision isn't there, his ability to read defenses isn't there at times. Those are the two things that may kind of force him to, turn the ball over a lot in the NFL. But of course, the positives are his ability to throw on the run, right? His ability to get outside the pocket and make plays on his feet, and his ability to just be a leader. Really, that's kind of one of the things they talked about, his leadership ability, right? He's got a big arm on him too, but his leadership ability was the main thing that I think San Francisco kind of took him for, along with his athleticism, because, San Francisco wants a quarterback that's young, that's athletic, that can move in the pocket, but they also want somebody that can help be a leader and help kind of galvanize the guys in the locker room and help bring everyone together. And he's that guy. He's a great leader. He's very mature. So, of course, that is one of the reasons why San Francisco drafted him. The one other weakness that I would look at in his game, and before I get to talking about more strengths that he has, would be sometimes I feel like when I have watched his highlights at North Dakota State, I've seen the videos of strengths and weaknesses, right? And I've seen the tape on him and everything. Sometimes I feel like sometimes he locks too much onto his first read and he's not able to look at all the other reads he has, right? He locks too much onto his first read, and I feel like sometimes when he locks onto his first read, his first instinct is to run. And that's something that will work in college, but in the NFL, it's really not going to work really well. You're going to have to be able to see more than one read. That was an issue with guys like Baker Mayfield 2 years ago, but now you look at the season Baker Mayfield had this past season. Baker Mayfield transitioned into not only seeing his first read, he saw everything, right? Baker Mayfield would only see his first read his first couple years. That's kind of why, he had a great rookie year, but why Baker Mayfield struggled in his second year was because he only saw his first read. And now you see Baker Mayfield had a great season last year because Baker Mayfield was able to disguise and say, okay, I can't just look at my first read and throw to my first read every time. And if my first read isn't open, I have to, get outside the pocket and throw it out of bounds, right? Baker Mayfield didn't do that. He decided, okay, I have to make an adjustment, and I have to be able to say, okay, I have to look past my first read and see everything else that's out there. So that's something with Trey Lance that he's going to have to develop eventually. He's probably not going to develop it his first year. It's going to be really tough. But by his second year, you hope that Trey Lance can develop the ability to see past his first read so he can be a guy who can get it to all his receivers, because he has Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, and then at the tight end spot, you have George Kittle. So you have a lot of weapons on that team that you can get the ball to. So we're going to have to make sure that Trey Lance is able to see past his first read, and hopefully that's the case there with the 49ers. Overall for the 49ers, I think I'll give them an A-. Like I said, I'm not the highest on Trey Lance, but I also don't think he's necessarily going to be a bust. I think he'll just be a solid quarterback, but I think he has a lot of potential. If he can work on some of the weaknesses that I mentioned, right? I think he'll be a good NFL player. Just being able to see past his first read is going to be the biggest thing for him, in my opinion. He doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but the weaknesses are pretty big, and they are things that, a lot of NFL quarterbacks have struggled with in the NFL. It has ruined some NFL players' careers and their ability to not see past the first read. So hopefully, eventually over time with that team, he can make that adjustment. But yeah, you got Shanahan there, so I think Shanahan will kind of help him get into his groove and help him make those changes that are necessary. So I see Trey Lance as being a solid quarterback. Nothing great, nothing too bad. I just see him as being a solid quarterback. Is he good enough to get that team over the hump? Because, they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, Jimmy Garoppolo, with a very identical roster. That's still up for debate. So we'll see. Time will tell with San Francisco. I'll be interested to see if they even make the playoffs this year. I think they can. It's just going to all depend on how Trey Lance plays this year. And hopefully Trey Lance is able to come in pretty early, right? You obviously know Jimmy Garoppolo is still there. And I would assume they plan on starting Garoppolo for the first couple games if they don't trade him, and then moving into Trey Lance eventually after Garoppolo. So hopefully this team can stay fully healthy this year, unlike last year. And hopefully Trey Lance is able to prove everyone wrong and show why he was the number 3 pick in the draft this year. So with the number 4 pick, this was probably one of the most obvious picks in the draft this year. We knew it was going to happen. Was Kyle Pitts to the Falcons. And I would give the Falcons an A+ for this one here, because I think the Falcons hit it home with this one. Yeah, you need a lot of work on the defensive end if you're Atlanta, but nobody really on the defensive end was good enough to be picked at number 4, in my opinion. Even though you have great defensive players in this draft that got picked early, nobody was good enough to go number 4. You picked Kyle Pitts. He's a generational tight end. He's one of a kind. He's going to be unbelievable. You put him with Calvin Ridley in that offense with a solid offensive line. And, you're going to have a very explosive offense. It's going to be a pass-heavy offense, which is really good for Kyle Pitts. Obviously, they got rid of Todd Gurley. He's a free agent. They're not going to re-sign him. So this is going to be a team that has mainly a pass-heavy offense. They do have Mike Davis, a running back who they picked up, but I only really see them using him in certain areas just to kind of gain them 2 or 3 yards on third downs because he's a power running back. I don't really see them using him as a 3-down back who they can give the ball to a lot. So this is going to be a pass-heavy team in Atlanta, and that will favor Kyle Pitts even more. So, again, I give this draft pick an A+ for Atlanta. Now on to the number 5 pick. Cincinnati decided at number 5 to really surprise everyone. This is one of the biggest surprises of the draft, and they decided to take Jamar Chase, who is going to be unbelievable. Jamar Chase is great. His speed, his hands, right? He's got arguably the best hands in the draft. His route running solid. He's so quick. He gets so much separation on his routes. Isolation, he's pretty much unguardable, right? He's going to be a very tough cover guy. He goes up and gets balls at a high rate. But for Cincinnati, this was not really the right pick, in my opinion. Because at the moment, Cincinnati currently has Tyler Boyd, who's 26 years old, and then you have T. Higgins, who's 22 years old, who will be going into his second season, who had a great rookie year last year. Those are 2 great young receivers. Tyler Boyd's very underrated. He's a guy who goes for 1,000 every year when he's healthy. And then you have T. Higgins, who will go for 1,000 next year when healthy. Maybe not now with Jamar Chase, but would have gone for 1,000, right, next year if he stayed healthy. And those are 2 guys relatively who did stay healthy. I mean, T. Higgins stayed healthy throughout the majority of the regular season. Tyler Boyd has a little injury tweaks here and there, but he's not really out for crazy amounts of time. So overall, I mean, as great as Jamar Chase is, and I understand the LSU connection that Jamar Chase had with Joe Burrow, I just feel like this was a draft pick that was a little kind of just let's go for what's the flashiest, let's go for what's going to make us look the best in terms of like just having as many weapons as we can, right? Joe Burrow tore his ACL last year. You have one of the worst offensive lines in football. That number 5 pick should have been Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell should have been that draft pick at number 5. He's a great offensive lineman. He's one of the better offensive linemen I've seen in the draft in the last couple of years. He's probably going to be a Pro Bowler this year, in my opinion. If he's not a Pro Bowler this year, he'll definitely be a Pro Bowler the year after, and he'll be a guy who will make multiple Pro Bowls, multiple All-Pro teams. He can be a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. That's the guy who you should have taken. Look, like I said before, I love Jamar Chase. He's a great player. He's going to be great. But you don't need another weapon. You don't need another weapon when Joe Burrow is going to have 1.5 seconds literally every time he says hut to throw the ball. He's going to have a second and a half to throw the ball. He's going to get killed out there. You had the worst offensive line, or the worst offensive line in football last year, I believe, right? And you didn't do anything to help that out. And you have a guy who took number 1 last year, Joe Burrow, a franchise quarterback who you think could be one of the best quarterbacks in football one day, according to you guys. And I think we all as NFL fans think that too. Right? And the media thinks that too. Experts, everyone thinks that Joe Burrow can be one of the best quarterbacks in the league in a short time. And you don't even go out there and get him protection. You go out there and get him another weapon that he doesn't really need. I mean, that offense is going to be scary in terms of the weapons they have. And they're probably going to be a very high-ranked offense, but they won't finish with a good record, right? Their defense needs a little work, but it's not bad. It's really not that bad. Their secondary is very good. They could use more work, getting to the quarterback and at the linebacker spot. But the issue here is going to be Joe Burrow's going to have no time to throw the ball. He's going to have no time to throw the ball, and you're risking another injury for Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow tore his ACL in his first year, as I mentioned earlier. You can't have another serious injury for Joe Burrow. That could really be threatening to his career for a long time, right? Again, it's just I understand in a way why they wanted to go with Jamar Chase because the chemistry he has with Joe Burrow because he won a national championship with Joe Burrow at LSU. But just in this situation, that wasn't the right pick. You really should have gone offensive lineman. Obviously, Penei Sewell preferably. So, yeah, I mean, I would give Cincinnati a B- on that one. Only reason I'm not giving them a C or C- is because Jamar Chase is unbelievable and he's going to be great in the NFL. But just not really what you need. Yeah, he may have been the most flashy player and the best player available, but it's just you're so desperate for an offensive lineman. You have a franchise quarterback that tore his ACL in his first year. You need to go get an offensive lineman. They didn't do that. So this was a failed draft for the Bengals, in my opinion. And again, it has nothing to do with Jamar Chase. It just has to do with the fact that they didn't need Jamar Chase. They needed Penei Sewell. They needed a good offensive lineman who could make Pro Bowls and all-pro teams that could help protect Joe Burrow on his blind side. And that's what Penei Sewell would have done, but they didn't get that. So moving on to the number 6 pick in the NFL draft, the Miami Dolphins selected Jalen Waddle, which I thought was a solid pick, right? You could have gone there, you could have gone Devontae Smith, or they even could have gone Penei Sewell in that with that pick as well. But they decided to go Jalen Waddle, who's a great receiver out of Alabama. He shows unbelievable speed, home run hitting type of touchdowns. Just throw it to him way out. Throw it to him deep. He's going to outrun every corner. He's going to. He's got solid hands. So, good pick for the Dolphins, in my opinion. A team that needed another receiver. Devontae's your number 1. Preston Williams was supposed to be their number 2 this year. Injuries and just really not playing to the highest level kind of pushed him out of that number 2 spot. So, yeah, you go and you get yourselves a really good number 2 wide receiver. So I think it's a great pick in terms of you got a great player. But is it the right scheme fit? And that's going to be the biggest question in this draft, right? With the Dolphins pick at number 6 with Jalen Waddle. Is it the right scheme fit? It's really a 50-50 in the air for me, but in my opinion, I think it is. As much as he's a deep threat and as much as Tua can't really get the ball down the field, I think in his ability to return punts, kicks, wherever they're going to put him, he's going to be a great returner. He's going to return for them, right? You still have Jakeem Grant, who's a great returner too, but I think Jalen Waddle will eventually take over the duties at return specialist. So, just really for Miami, it's just going to be hopefully Tua can get the ball to him down the field when he does go down the field, because that's, what he does a lot, and that's what he's best at. But then again, he's a great guy, yards after catch, so he is a guy who I can see running a lot of short routes, a lot of slants, a lot of, wide receiver screens, and things like that where he can kind of make craziness out of nothing. So, yeah, overall for Miami, I give it a A-. I think they went out and got a position in need. I think they went out and got the best receiver available in Jalen Waddle. And I think Miami is ready to go, and they're ready to give Tua the keys to the franchise and just let him go from here and see what he can do. So at the number 7 pick, you had the Detroit Lions, who took Penei Sewell, which was a good pick for them, right? A lot of people thought they needed another receiver, and they do. They're very weak at the receiver spot, with the loss of Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, but this is an offensive lineman you really can't pass on. They go and they get Jared Goff this offseason. They think he can be a future guy for them, so they want to get him as much protection as they can. That's going to be a good offensive line now in Detroit. Their defense needs a little work, but it's not bad. They're just going to need to now get Jared Goff a little more help at receiver, so maybe they do that in the 2nd and 3rd rounds tonight. So we'll make sure to keep an eye on that. But overall for this draft pick, I'll give Detroit an A+. He's the best offensive lineman in this draft. He's one of the better offensive linemen I've seen in a long time, and this is a great pick for Detroit in my opinion. At the number 8 pick, you had the Carolina Panthers, who took J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, the cornerback, who, is a great cornerback. He's going to be great in this league. Great tackler, great in one-on-one coverage, real physical, real strong. So a great pick in Carolina, in my opinion. He's going to fit into that team really well. Carolina went and got a position that they desperately needed, right? A lot of people argue they could have went offensive tackle here, but I think this was a good pick overall for Carolina, in my opinion. I would give them an A-. They went on and picked one of the 2 better corners in this draft class, because there's 2 great corners in this draft class, and I'll get to the second one with Denver in a minute. But they went on and picked who they thought was the best corner in this draft class, and he's going to be great for them, and he's going to be an instant starter for them right away in Carolina. He's going to help a position of need, and he is going to hopefully change that defense for years to come in Carolina. So great pick for Carolina. Now to move on to number 9 with Denver. Denver decided at number 9 to pick Pat Surtain out of Alabama, who I believe is the best corner in this draft. There's a lot of argument between him and J.C. Horn, but I think Pat Surtain is the best corner in this draft, in my opinion. I'm a Broncos fan, just to let everyone know. So overall with this pick, at first I wasn't too happy because we do have a lot of corners, but then I remember to myself, we're in a division with Kansas City, who has Mahomes, with weapons like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and McCole Hardman. You're with the Chargers, who have Justin Herbert, with weapons like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. You have the Las Vegas Raiders, who are not a great defensive team, but they have weapons on the offensive end. They have Derek Carr, who has shown flashes at times, and they also have Henry Ruggs with Darren Waller. So you have a lot of teams in this division who can really fling the ball, and to be able to go and get a guy like this who can play isolation, one-on-one coverage is going to be great. In my opinion, Denver now has the best defense in the league with Von Miller returning. They just picked up the option for Bradley Chubb today, which was a great move by them. And he's a great player, obviously. But you have a great secondary with Denver, in my opinion, now. As I mentioned, the best defense in the league, and I also think the best secondary in the league. That's what's going to drive this team. Their linebackers and their secondary, right? You have Justin Simmons at safety, along with Kareem Jackson. That's the best safety duo in football, in my opinion. And then you add Pat Surtain, along with Bryce Callahan, Bradley Roby, and Kyle Fuller. That's going to be a great team, right? In my opinion, you put Bryce Callahan in the slot where he's most comfortable at, where he plays most at. You put Pat Surtain out wide, isolation, one-on-one. I think you start him right away. I think he's that good. And then you have Kyle Fuller on the other end, and then you bring in Bradley Roby, with the rotations at that slot spot, or even for Pat Surtain at times. But no, overall, great pick for Denver. You got arguably the best, or I think the best, right? Arguably compared to the fans, but I think the best one-on-one cover corner in this draft. A great guy for Denver. He's going to be the Patrick Mahomes stopper, and that's what Denver came out and said today. They said they want him to be the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes stopper. They want him to be able to limit that offense with Kansas City and give Kansas City a really tough time, because you saw what Tampa was able to do with Kansas City last year, right? Tampa was able to get pressure to the quarterback, which Denver can do with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. And then Tampa was also able to back it up with a great secondary to limit the Kansas City receivers. And Denver believes they can follow the same recipe, and I don't blame them. I think they can. I think defensively they can follow the same recipe that Tampa used last year against Kansas City. So it will be really interesting to see how Denver plays this year with that defense. So great pick for Denver. I give it an A in my opinion. A lot of people thought they should have gone with Justin Fields, but honestly, I think you're fine with giving Drew Lock one more opportunity. And you have Teddy Bridgewater, who's really not that bad. He's pretty good. And you have a good offensive line. You have good weapons on the offensive end. So your offense is going to be better than people think, and the defense is going to be top tier, and that will win them games. So Denver is going to be good this year. I give, again, that pick an A in my opinion. You went out and got the best corner in that draft, in my opinion. So for the number 10 pick in the draft, the Eagles went with Devontae Smith. They traded up from this pick with Dallas. Great pick for the Eagles. Not really much else to say here. This is an A pick, in my opinion. You went out and got a position of need with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, who is your future quarterback. He showed great progression last year. He showed a great ability to be able to play at a high level last year and play in big-time games last year for the Eagles. So you add him with Devontae Smith with Jalen Hurts, and that's going to be a great team. In my opinion, the Eagles are going to be a good team this year. I think that will really help their offense. That will really kind of kickstart their offense, in my opinion. I think the Eagles will make the playoffs. I don't know what they'll do much in the playoffs, but I love the Devontae Smith pick. It's one of my favorite picks in the draft. I think he's very underrated. He's getting slept on a lot, and I think he's going to do a lot of big things for the Eagles next year. I think 1,000-plus yards in his first year. For the number 11 pick, the Bears traded up. They got rid of a lot of future picks, but they traded up and got Justin Fields. They got a position that they really need. We know they have Andy Dalton, and that was their QB1. They got rid of Mitch Trubisky. So they desperately needed a quarterback, and they went and got a quarterback. So Bears fans are happy. Their franchise is happy. Fields is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in this draft, if not the most accurate quarterback in this draft. He's good outside the pocket. Really doesn't have too many weaknesses, in my opinion. Sometimes he just doesn't see past his first read like Trey Lance, but that's something I think he can work on with this team. He's going to have solid weapons with Allen Robinson. I think you're going to see Anthony Miller take another step forward in his game. Last year he took a step back, but I think you're going to see him take a step forward, in my opinion. I think last year was just the quarterback issues that kind of held him back. And then you have Jimmy Graham, who's still solid for a little while longer. You have David Montgomery, who's one of the better young running backs, and you have a pretty good offensive line and a good defense. So good pick for the Bears here. Justin Fields, I think, is going to do really well with the Chicago Bears, in my opinion. That's a great pick for the Bears. I would give them A+ on that one, because they needed a quarterback, and they went on and got the second best quarterback in this draft, in my opinion. With the number 12 pick, the Dallas Cowboys, I would give this Cowboys draft pick B+. And it's not because it's a bad player. It's just because the Cowboys traded so many times to get out of the original pick that they had, where they could have taken a player that they kind of really desired, a corner, right? And obviously, Denver and Carolina took the corner, so they would have had to trade up. But I would have rather have seen Dallas trade up to number 9 or 8 and taken one of those 2 corners, right? In my opinion. But still, you get a very good linebacker in Micah Parsons. So good pick overall for Dallas. Just obviously, they really wanted that corner. Their secondary is really weak. They're going to get exposed again in their secondary, but we'll see. I mean, he's a great linebacker. Sean Lee retired, so he will fill that hole there, even though Sean Lee was kind of hurt most games this year in the last couple of years. But he will fill a hole there, and he'll put a very good stamp on Dallas having great linebackers, with all 3 of their linebackers. So that will be a really big thing for Dallas, to really kind of put more strength to their linebacker spot, and they can get to the quarterback pretty well. But again, that secondary is going to get exposed, in my opinion. But hey, not a bad pick, a very good player, just maybe not the right position they needed in this instance. They probably should have traded up with Denver or Carolina, in my opinion, which they could have easily done. So for the next pick number 13, the Chargers took Rashawn Slater, who I thought was arguably one of the better picks in this draft. They took an offensive tackle, which they desperately needed for Justin Herbert in that offense. And he was the second best offensive tackle in this draft, in my opinion. He went too far down, in my opinion. This was a guy who even the Cowboys could have taken, too, to help protect Prescott, as Prescott's offensive line isn't the best. It's really shaky. But, again, this is a great pick for the Chargers. I give this pick an A+. For the Chargers, in my opinion. I think they did a great job with this pick. It's going to help Justin Herbert's future. It's going to give those receivers more time to get open. It's just overall a great pick. You bring back Austin Eckler, who was hurt most of last year. This team's going to be good. I think they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a good offense. You bring back Derwin James on defense, right? Chargers are going to be a scary team next year. And this pick with Rashawn Slater was a great pick, in my opinion. Again, I would give it an A+. So to move on, we already talked about pick number 14 with the Jets, so I'm going to move on and talk about pick number 15 with Mac Jones with the Patriots. I give this pick a C. And it's not because I don't like, Mac Jones. It's just because I don't believe Mac Jones will be that great of a quarterback. I don't, right? He's a good pocket passer, but you also have to understand the NFL is much different now than it was many years ago. He can't throw outside the pocket, and when he gets outside the pocket, he takes too many sacks, or he just goes down, and he doesn't really have a great read of understanding how to make throws on the run. He's going to get chased around a lot with these great defensive linemen and these great ends, right, and these great linebackers that can get to the quarterback, right? He's going to get chased around in the league a lot. A lot of teams have great guys that can get to the quarterback. He's going to get chased around a lot and have to move around in the pocket a little. I'm not saying you have to be a runner in the NFL now. You just have to have an ability to kind of be able to throw outside the pocket. And many people will bring up Brady or Rodgers. In this case, not Rodgers. Sorry, Rodgers is great outside the pocket. Many people will bring up Brady and Breeze. But yes, obviously Brady's the GOAT. Breeze is one of the greatest of all time. But those guys established themselves as unreal pocket passers. So they didn't have to kind of get outside the pocket, right? And the game's much different now. Obviously you see now Brady just won a Super Bowl last year. He's still playing at a high level, but as I mentioned, he's such a good pocket passer and such a good decision maker with the football that Brady is just unreal at pocket passing, that he can get away with not being able to kind of get away from pressure. And Brady is actually pretty good at getting away from pressure. I would still put him at a better quarterback at getting away from pressure at his age now than Mac Jones is coming into the NFL draft. But let's just see how it turns out for the Patriots. I know they wanted a quarterback. So my guess is camp starts for the first couple of weeks, and then you bring in Mac Jones. So let's see what that does. This pick's getting a lot of hate. I'm not a fan of it either, but maybe he ends up surprising all of us, because we know Belichick has a special recipe to making quarterbacks better than they are, right? So we'll see. At pick number 16, the Arizona Cardinals decided to go linebacker. They went with Zaven Collins, who's a solid linebacker out of Tulsa. It was a pick, though, that I thought was a little premature. Like, this was a team who probably should have gotten Kyler Murray more protection on the offensive tackle spot, in my opinion. But he's not a bad linebacker. He's very versatile. He can get to the passer. He can rush. He can get to the passer by rushing. He's also not a bad cover guy. So he's a great guy, in my opinion, for this team to fit at linebacker, but maybe just not the right need for this team, if you know what I mean. Maybe the best player available at this point, but just not the right need for this team in terms of they need Kyler Murray to get more protection. So overall, I give this pick a B. I don't think it's a bad pick. It's a good player. I just don't think it's the right position that you need if you're Arizona. So to go on to pick number 17, the Raiders took Alex Leatherwood, which got a lot of hate from Raider fan base and just NFL media in general. So, it's really not that he's not going to be a good player. I think he'll end up being a solid, a solid tackle for the Raiders, which is a position they really need. They got rid of all their tackles in this offseason. They had a great offensive line last year, but they got rid of everyone this offseason because of money issues and everything. But, I just think, you had Tevin Jenkins available. You probably should have gone with him, but overall, I'll give this pick a C. I don't think it's really as bad as a pick as a lot of people are saying. I think he's going to be a good player. I just think you could have gone with a better offensive tackle in that spot and probably taken him in terms of Alex Leatherwood, I'm talking about, in the second round. So, we'll just see. We'll see how he ends up turning out to be, but overall, I give that pick a C. And then the Dolphins had the number 18 pick. Oh, I forgot to mention them when I talked about their previous number 6 pick, so I'll just talk about them really quick now. They had They took Jalen Phillips at number 18. Hometown kid, went to so he'll have ties, there, and he'll have a lot of fan support. This pick is really interesting in my opinion. It's kind of a surpriser. I would probably give it a B+. I think he's going to be a good player in this league, and I think they did need another pass rusher, but a lot of people thought they needed Najee Harris. So that's the only reason I'm giving it a B+, because they could have also went running back. But overall, I think Jalen Phillips was a solid pick. I think he's going to help them get to the quarterback. It's something that they really need, and he's going to only take this good defense to another level. So overall, I give it a B+, a good pick in my opinion. Yeah, you could have gone Najee Harris, but you never know with running backs, right? A lot of running backs end up being good. A lot end up being bad. They can go and they can pick up a running back next year or go and, develop some of these running backs that they have on their roster right now. So be really interesting to see how Jalen Phillips is able to develop in Miami. With the number 19 pick, Washington took Jamin Davis. I'll give this pick a B+, solid pick. You could have gone to other positions in this area. You could have gone receiver. In my opinion, there are still some solid receivers available, but, overall, I think it's a solid pick. Like I said, I give it a B+. It's really going to help your linebacker spot. And this just makes this defense even scarier. This defense is going to be scary. Again, next year they got even better with this. He's really physical. He can do everything. He's very versatile. So, yeah, overall, B+ pick for Washington. I think it's getting too much hate, and I think they're going to like this pick down the road. And then the Giants at 20, the Giants moved around more than any team in this draft. A lot of the NFC East teams moved around with each other, which was kind of weird to see. But the Giants moved around a lot and ended up with the 20th pick, and they took Kadarius Toney, who I think is going to be a decent NFL player, but I just think you have Kenny Golladay, you added Kenny Golladay, you still have Darius Slayton, you still have Sterling Shepard. I just don't really understand this pick, really kind of from a standpoint of the position. You're already pretty good at receiver. How much help can you get Daniel Jones? It's just kind of comes to a point where if you need this much help for Daniel Jones, it's probably just time for you to give up on Daniel Jones, right? So, I give this pick a C. I don't think it was a great pick, really. I think he's going to be a good receiver. I think he can do a little bit of everything, at the receiver spot. He can return, I think. He can play the receiver spot really well. I just think he's quick, too. He can run, jet sweeps and end arounds and things like that. But I just don't think it was the right piece for this team to take, because I think this team needed a good edge rusher. That was the main thing this team needed. Somebody to get to the quarterback to help out their secondary and to just help out their defense and overall. I would have taken Kwity Paye with this pick, in my opinion. So, very interesting there for the Giants. Not a great pick, in my opinion, but we'll see. May help out Daniel Jones more. So that's obviously the goal here, to keep Daniel Jones and put a good offense around him so they can build around him. They don't want to have to go out and get another quarterback again. So that's the goal, I guess, to just kind of beef up the offense. So, I get it, I guess, from a Giants standpoint, but overall, in my opinion, I wouldn't have gone there, but it is what it is. And then obviously with the 21st pick, the Colts took Kwity Paye, who, was a great pick in my opinion. I give this pick a B. I think it's like a lot of people are hating on this pick, right? And I think he's going to be a good player. It's the guy the Giants should have gotten, in my opinion. I think he's very underrated. I think he's one of the bigger sleepers in this draft. But I just think, you have DeForest Buckner there. I just think that this could be a really scary duo, right? next to DeForest Buckner, and this could really be like a great pickup for the Colts. So no, great draft pick for the Colts. The Colts are obviously a team who drafts really well every year. So yeah, I think this is a good pick for the Colts and one of the biggest sleeper picks in the draft. At 22, Titans took Caleb Farley. They got to a position that they desperately needed at cornerback, right? And I think he'll end up being a pretty good corner. Nothing great, but a pretty good corner. And again, I said a position they need. I'll give this pick a B, in my opinion. You had 23. The Vikings went with Christian Darrisaw, which I thought this was one of the better moves in the draft. I give this pick a B+, but it's not just the pick that I would give a B+. It's the fact that Minnesota moved around a lot in the draft, right? And they were able to get the player they wanted all along, and they got 2 extra third-round picks. So that's great in my opinion. Minnesota was able to move around in the draft and get extra picks for this year's draft. So no, I mean, overall a great trade for Minnesota in my opinion, and a pretty solid pick as well for Minnesota. So again, I give it a B+. At the number 24 pick, you have Najee Harris at Alabama going to Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh got rid of James Conner, who really struggled this past year. Now they go and they get their running back 1. So, overall, in my opinion, that's probably an A draft grade for Pittsburgh, in my opinion, because they went and they got somebody to kind of help Ben Roethlisberger in his last season. You saw him digress throughout the season. He's probably not going to have a great season next year, but you go and you get him a running back, somebody to take the pressure off so he doesn't have to throw the ball 40 times a game. So, no, great pick in my opinion for Pittsburgh. That was one of the better picks of the draft. We already talked about Jacksonville at 25. Let's talk about Greg Newsome at 26 with Cleveland. Good pick in my opinion. I think he could have gone a lot higher in this draft. Cleveland got a steal here, in my opinion. They got a great corner to put next to Denzel Ward, which will really help this team on the defensive end of the ball. Cleveland's just getting better and better every offseason, and a great draft for Cleveland by picking him. I give it an A. And then Baltimore went down at 27. Rashad Bateman, who, other than Justin Fields, is probably my favorite pick in this draft. You went in, you got Lamar Jackson, a wide receiver that he desperately needed. I see a lot of hate about this pick from a lot of different experts and, just media in the NFL, but I think it's a great pick. I think you went and got Lamar Jackson, a position you needed to get him for years. Or not years, or since he's been there, right? They tried to get Kenny Golladay. They couldn't do that. They tried to get Marvin Jones. They couldn't do that. They tried to get so many different guys this offseason during free agency and that they couldn't get at the trade deadline last year, blah, 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 that they could not get. So you went and you go out and you get Rashad Bateman, and you go out and get a very underrated receiver in this draft who's very versatile, and he's a big target. So great pick, in my opinion, for Baltimore. He's going to fit really well with the Ravens scheme and how they run their offense, and I think he's going to end up being one of the bigger sleeper picks in this draft. So I give this pick an A+. And then you have the Saints. They took Peyton Turner at number 28. Probably the worst pick in the draft, in my opinion, if you ask me. Just not really a position that they needed. A guy who's very injury prone. I give this pick a D, in my opinion. I think he can end up being a decent player, but he's just too injury prone. And I don't see crazy potential there to take him at number 28, which is a good pick overall when you think about it in an NFL draft. I just think you could have got much better here, in my opinion, than what you ended up picking out. Even taking Eric Stokes, would have been better, in my opinion, than what you were able to get here. So, I give that pick a D, in my opinion. Back on to Eric Stokes. Green Bay went and took Eric Stokes with the 29th pick. And this is a weird pick because obviously, Aaron Rodgers wants a trade. He wants out. And you would have thought they would have gotten him a receiver or traded up to get him a receiver. But they didn't do that. And they went in, they got a corner because obviously they don't trust Kevin King at that spot. They do trust Jair Alexander, who's one of the best in the game, but they don't trust Kevin King. So they wanted to get another corner for this defense. But this is just a pick that would probably frustrate Rodgers more. I'll give it a B. Just because I think it's a position that they needed, but I just don't think it fits well with what Rodgers' mood is right now. And that is your franchise player. That is one of the best players that's ever played for that franchise. So you want to keep him there. You got to get the players he wants, and that's not one of the players he wanted. So a good pick for Green Bay in terms of what they need, but not a great pick in terms of the situation that they're in right now. Then at number 30, the Bills went and took Gregory Rousseau. Not really the ideal pick, in my opinion. A lot of people think it's the worst pick in the draft. I don't think it is. It's just like he's just very young, and he didn't play a lot of games in college. He didn't really have great experience in college, right? He has great raw potential. So for the Bills here, I mean, this pick is kind of a high risk or low risk, high reward pick. So yeah, may not be the best pick. I'll give it a C, but we're really getting a little too much hate in my opinion. He just has a long way to go in my opinion in terms of developing his game at the edge spot. He's not the best at getting to the quarterback. He's just too inconsistent. But, I don't know. I mean, the Bills think he could be a high reward player, and I think he does have potential if he can change a couple things in his game. But we'll see. Be an interesting pick for the Bills. At number 31, the Baltimore Ravens took Jason Away, which I thought was a very solid pick, in my opinion, out of Penn State. They need a little more help getting to the quarterback, and they got that with him. I think he's pretty underrated. He had a great pro day. He's going to be a guy that takes a while to develop, but I think if he can develop for this team, he can be a very good team or a very good player for this team. Because this team obviously lost Matt Judon and Ngakwe. So this team lost a lot of guys. He adds to a position that this team really needs. And again, as I mentioned, I like taking guys, of a position of need over the best player available, and that's what they did here. So overall for Baltimore, I give it a B+, solid pick. And in the final pick of the draft, the defending Super Bowl champions, they decided to go with Joe Tryon, who in my opinion was one of the sneakier picks of this draft. He has good upside. He's very big. He's strong, right? He's a very technical edge rusher, right? He's got good technique. He has potential for this team, and in Todd Bowles' defensive system, he could be very good for Todd Bowles to kind of use and to kind of turn him into a better player than a number 32 pick, in my opinion. So, yeah, good pick for Tampa here. Obviously they returned all starters on last year's Super Bowl team. Tampa's going to be scary again, and this pick is very underrated. It's going to be a slept-on pick, and I think you're going to see him over time take a little bit of time to develop, in my opinion. But, I think Todd Bowles will help him get to the quarterback better. Like I mentioned, he has good technique. He just has to use more power to get to the quarterback and just utilize his strength more, right? But I think Todd Bowles will really help him on that defensive end. He's a great defensive coordinator. So, no, overall good pick for Tampa. I'd give it a B+. So that is going to wrap it up for episode number 1 of the football podcast. Make sure you check out the Instagram page. I'm going to post it on the same YouTube page I post my basketball ones on. I will make a playlist so it's easier for you guys, the fans, to access these podcasts in the most organized way. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast.